Season 2 is finally among us, guys.
What is being married like?
Yeah, we've been married for 1.5 years now. For me, thanks, Beyonce.
And I'm excited for this new adventure of Season 2. Let's go.
Yay. Hello and welcome. I'm here with my good friends, Naomi, Sion, and
Hello.
Leiji.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Beth, and today we want to share some of our experiences about mental health and well-being. So this is a topic which is obviously pretty current.
Yes.
It gets talked about a lot. I think we often hear words like anxiety, triggers, depression, like all of these things. But I'm curious to ask some of your experiences. I think I want to start with asking Naomi, just because we've been talking about this before the show.
Yes.
We do that, guys.
Yes.
Sometimes.
We are friends outside of this.
We do actually talk about
We
things.
talk to each other.
I know a few of you have struggled with anxiety before still or in the past, Naomi.
Yeah, mine's still ongoing.
You're still ongoing with anxiety.
Yeah.
And so do you want to share something about that? What are some of the things about having anxiety that which are challenging, which seems like a bit of a stupid question, doesn't it?
Challenging.
Explain what that means to have anxiety right now for you. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, Beth, great question. No, I think that is good because already I think the reality is we can sometimes talk about something with a title and then we assume that either what we have experienced or what we've heard then is the way that everyone else experiences it.
Yeah.
So I think that's great because for me, when I talk about anxiety, it could look very different from any of you three girls or even someone who's listening right now who's saying, oh, I also struggle with anxiety.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I actually have quite a constant like physical feeling probably of anxiety in my chest that is daily, probably multiple times, or if not, just kind of never ending, an eternal sense or feeling internally of just kind of like anxiousness.
What does it mean physically feeling that?
Yeah, I realized when I was like, it's not just a sense. It's like
I'm
a
curious.
physical
Yeah.
feeling.
So you're feeling it physically. What is that? Can you describe it?
Yeah. So I mean, even right now, I would be feeling anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of within my core, almost like, I don't know, like in my chest, within my core, there is a kind of like tightness,
Right.
a like shakiness a bit sometimes. It just feels like a very kind of like tightness and compactness.
Yeah.
And kind of a bit of, I don't know how to describe it. They're not almost like a murmuring, you
Yeah.
know, where it's like a,
Yeah.
So I think for me, like my journey with anxiety definitely has, been an interesting one because I think it's something that from when I was quite young, I don't know if I really had anxiety or not. It's like hard for me to think about looking back.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know that as a kid, I definitely had kind of lowness, and I definitely would kind of go into these seasons of feeling, and not just seasons, but sometimes just having this thing where I'd overthink everything to the point that then I would be like, what am I doing?
Right.
Why do I exist?
Yeah.
Like, I could be doing one good thing, but maybe I should be doing this other good thing. And like, whatever I do is maybe not the right thing that I should be doing, or like, and kind of just this sense of wanting my life to have impact, but then never knowing the perfect way for my life to be kind of thing. And so I think some of it also, ever since I was a kid, like I've been a real, like probably kind of had perfectionist tendencies, and this like pressure for excellence.
Right.
So I think there's an element to that of kind of this feeling often of like never being able to be enough in things, or sometimes feeling like too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the anxiety for me, I think I particularly became aware of it it was probably like spring of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, so not
Good.
So when Girl
Not
Talk
too long ago.
started. Yeah. So it's not too, I mean, it's 3 years, but that's actually sooner than I thought. I thought
Yeah.
for some reason I was thinking this is something that you'd been battling with for a longer time, or maybe,
Yeah, so I think for me, it's one of those things where it's hard for me to know because ever since I remember being in school, feeling a lot of pressure in school, like your mind going to things of like, and I think maybe many of us can have this, but your mind going to things of like, I feel so stressed and anxious about this that it's like, I would like to get hit by a car and not have to do this exam tomorrow. Like,
and
anything that can
That's
get you out of that.
Yeah,
for
anything.
sure.
Yeah.
That's a question that I have. Maybe Leiji or Sion, you have an answer for it. Because I think for me, like, obviously I've experienced times in my life where I felt anxious.
Yeah.
I've experienced times in my life, I struggle with stress a lot.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I don't think I could say that I have anxiety. I don't have a physical feeling. It's not something
Yeah.
I've been diagnosed with. And so for you, where's the difference? And what's the difference there for like being anxious and stressed versus I have anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah. I mean, I can share how it's for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have like the answer.
What's your
We definitely don't
answer?
have the medical
No, we
definition.
don't. We want to put that out there. We're
Yes.
not
Yeah.
doctors. Or,
Yeah.
What's
So-
your definition?
For me, I suffer with anxiety, but for me, it's more a imposter syndrome.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, like I can tell you right now, my heart's beating so fast. Exactly for that feeling of like, who am I to be here in this microphone sharing about my own experiences? You know, so that's something that I always had in the back of my mind.
Right.
I also suffer with that anxiety of like, I don't know, someone is talking to me and then I had that feeling of like, what do I say now? Or, you know, when you're in a meeting and then like share something funny about yourself or like, where's the fun fact?
Yeah.
I never heard about that until I moved to England.
Sorry about that.
And then here it happens a lot. Happens a lot when you're like in a room with people that you don't know, and instead of like listening to what people are saying, I'm like, how do I share my piece of, you know?
Yours would be more about measuring up and like feeling like you're not maybe worthy to be doing what you're doing right now. That's your anxiety.
Yeah, the imposter, I don't know if you heard about it, the imposter syndrome. It's like one way to put it, when like you're invited to do something and you just feel that you're not capable or you're not the right person. It's that feeling of, I don't know, being part of Girl Talk. It's amazing. I love being sharing this time with you guys. It's like we all are different in our own ways and we have things to add. But sometimes it comes that feeling of, but am I good enough to be with those girls? Like, do I really have things to share? Like, they're amazing.
Yes, you are.
It's actually, and then comes the fight of, yes, I can be part of this. Like, I have things to share. And it's not only here, but in other areas, like becoming a mom. Like, am I capable of actually taking care of a child? On my work, the things I'm doing, sometimes like, God putting something on my heart saying like, share this. And I'm like, I shouldn't be sharing this. Like, I'm so, you know, you just pushing that. It's that constant fight of, when it comes to my mind, I need to fight again.
Yeah. And what would you say, do you have an idea of, or what's your opinion maybe on like, where does that come from? Like, where does these, maybe you would say like,
Expectations.
where does this, like these high expectations come from, this imposter syndrome? Is it, do you have a experience from the past or an upbringing, or where does it come from for you? Do you know?
I can't really say 100%, but when I was teenager, I was always like very upfront. I didn't really, since I was a kid, like I am the oldest, pretty much the oldest.
High responsibility.
I'm the oldest child, like first daughter, first granddaughter.
Right.
And then I would always make things happen, keeping the kids entertained. Like but I loved doing that. It wasn't exactly like the pressure put on me. I enjoy doing that. So once I was getting older and I would do that around my friends or even at school, I would just, we need someone to be responsible for that one thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm up for that. Like I was so active. But then because of, how it is in school, teenagers and all of that, people be like, wow, you really want to be like the one doing it? Or, all of that judgment. And then it start to like get on me. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be the one doing this. Like, why am I the one that should be involved? So I think that's where like the first seed kind of got in.
And then it grows.
Yeah.
And it grows.
Yeah.
Because if you feed that, it's going to get bigger.
Yes, that's true. And Sion, when we were talking about anxiety just earlier today, you were talking in a past tense. So am I right in saying you used to suffer with anxiety and now you don't?
I still struggle with anxiety, but I just have more control of it.
Okay, and how do you have control of it?
I think, for many years I struggled with panic attacks, anxiety, and mine was tied with trauma.
Okay.
And I think mine at a young age, as some of you know, I was adopted and was in a very traumatic place. Went from Ethiopia to America and was a very horrific time, and then came to Canada. So I think mine tied with my anxiety didn't actually come up till I went back to Ethiopia when I went to pick up my birth brother, and all of the trauma, all the things that my mind might not have remembered everything, but my heart did, and it triggered. Right. And so when I came back to Canada, and I was like, what is happening to me? Like my body was just tense. And then I would always think my heart like has stopped. When I look back, some of the stories, it's quite funny. We'd be like eating dinner with my family, and all of a sudden I'll just get up and I'm like, guys, I think my heart stopped. Yeah. And then it's just like, Mom's like, no, you're still breathing, sit down. All these things. And I think when I look back at it, it's like, wow, like it really did take over my life. And for many years, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't really eat. And so I think, so anyway, long story short, as I got older, I was like, wow, this has like had taken over my life. I need to figure this out. Went to the doctor. They did all the tests, like, this is anxiety. And you feel so alone because you feel like, what? Am I the only one that experienced this? Am I the only one that's feeling this? And I had an amazing doctor who just walked that journey with me, and I was on medicine that just to help me to kind of,
so for you, anxiety, medication
at that time. Yeah. And honestly, I think through that, I learned, with medication, also like God has helped me through that very dark time.
Hallelujah.
And it was a very dark time, and you don't wish up your worst enemy. And I think as I got older and would able to understand myself and understand what was the trigger of this, and dealing with those trauma, dealing with, whether it be counseling and just like, okay, this comes from something, we're gonna have to deal with that to heal, to move forward. So I think as I got older, acknowledging, all right, I have anxiety, this comes from trauma, I'm gonna need to go counseling, yada, yada, yada. So today I don't have, like, it's not severe, but it tends to come up when it has to do with health, because I'm a hypochondriac. So whenever I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a tumor. It's like, no, you just have a sore, throat or whatever. So I think for me, how I control it is I have to eat right, exercise, make sure I'm getting enough sleep. And also for myself, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Take a moment. Why do you feel anxious?
Right.
What's happening in my life right now? And talk myself through it. And sometimes either be talking to a friend, talking to God, going for a walk. So if I stay on top of those things, it helps me to take a control. But I think the number one thing that helps me is like, okay, noticing your body. And we all know our body. And I'm just like, I'm feeling anxious. Okay, Sion, why do you think you feel anxious right now? What is the thing? Okay, everything's going to be okay. You're feeling anxious because you're about to transition out of, something to something
telling
new.
yourself what's happening.
Yeah, what is happening.
Your body to catch up.
Yes. And then sometimes right away why your anxiety is triggered. And if I'm not getting the proper sleep or taking care of myself, that triggers it also. Yeah. So I've struggled with it with many years, and it doesn't have a hold on me. I got a lot of healing, not just like mentally, spiritually, like just God has really like helped me. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, honestly. Yeah. And I think
that's so good.
My faith grew, and just knowing that, and not allowing the enemy get hold of that. And I think that's
absolutely
for so long, he did.
Yeah.
So
it's quite interesting hearing, because you all, as a blanket statement, would say I've struggled with anxiety, but each one of your experiences is so different, and each of your definitions of anxiety is so different. And so it's actually eye-opening for me to think, okay, anxiety, actually, when somebody says that, I want to be more aware of actually asking a question of like, what does that actually mean to you? What does that look like?
It looks so
because
different.
If I've only listened to Naomi's experience, like then when I'm relating with Leiji, I might not be relating. I might be thinking something completely different.
That's what Leiji is experiencing.
Yeah, and one of my things I noticed, like for the longest time, I was like, oh, it's like, and it is trauma related. But I think the start of the trauma was, so my birth mom passed away. And I think what kind of triggered that was when I went to Ethiopia and not knowing what she died from, and not knowing, So for me, I think in a sense, like death has always been part of like that,
Yeah,
because
is terrifying.
you know, and so I think, you know, having someone so close to me as my mom, like who died, and then, you know, death has entered my life at such a young age.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of interesting, because when I even sit here to think about it, I was like, man, I have fear of death and life, because I'm scared of like death, because of not knowing, not so much anymore because hallelujah, I accepted Jesus. Then, but then when I used to be terrified of like giving birth, you know, so I'm like, interesting, death, like fear of death and life, you know? And so just those things that just like, okay, you know, figuring that out. And always telling myself, I was like, okay, what was it? Why are you so afraid that you didn't know what your mom died from? I was like, what happens if I have it? Oh my gosh. And then I'm like, yeah, but like I live in a, you know, such a privilege to live in a world where, you know, there's medicine and all these things. And my mom maybe didn't have that, you know? So those kind of things.
I feel that some of this recognizing or understanding come with time and maturity as well.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, like I would just accept that on me, like I would just close myself, or I wouldn't give myself a chance to actually fight against that. I would just accept that kind of mentality.
Yes.
But after some time, like you were saying, like you had a doctor, like you talked. When I started talking about that, that also helped me to understand what I was going through. So when those words or those feelings would come up, I could ask myself why I was feeling it.
No, that's so good.
Sometimes it's just, I find some things that really help struggling with other health things. Is like my mom's always telling me like accepting where you're at and being okay with it.
Yeah.
And not trying to fight against what's happening. Yeah. And just be like, okay, this is happening. Yeah. And it's actually okay. Like it sucks, but it's actually okay.
I think it's interesting because I think for me, even in some of the things that you guys shared, I'm like, yes. Like, I think there are almost like 3 key areas that I notice probably are some elements of like impacting anxiety or have triggered anxiety in some ways. And I think one of them is death, like, and very much so. It's like I've been so blessed, like, and I can't even imagine in terms of CO and you working through the things and your history and your life. Like, I have had a very steady family background and things like that. And my immediate family are all alive. They're all well. Yeah. But I think even just for me, kind of where it was like, when I was probably quite young, like 12, it was a 12 or 13, a really good, like one of our neighbors passed away unexpectedly. She was 21. And I think that I remember being told and just kind of just like feeling nothing in the moment because it was so shocking. It was almost like the first time that you heard of someone who wasn't, you know, in their 80s, 90s dying, but like someone who was young and where you just saw the life that they would have had ahead of them. And I think that really impacted me without me realizing. And I think even in that is like the way that then just for me in terms of like generally going through life is like one of my previous boyfriends had a real trauma thing like that of one of his really good friends dying when he was really young. And so kind of working through that with someone else and hearing that and seeing the impact on them from death. Yeah. And then even now my current husband, well, my husband for life, my husband Connor. I love it. But even just like very early on into us starting a relationship, and I don't think I mean, it wouldn't have even happened. So this is the first time that I'm sharing about it. But within probably 3 months of us dating, then his dad was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 cancer. And he passed away within probably 6 to 8 months from when we found that out. Wow. So I think even in that and just unexpected, I think for me, it's the thing of a lot of these, like where it's unexpected deaths, like even though they haven't always been to impacting my immediate family, like if for some reason it's something that really grates and has impacted. And I don't know if it's that there's an element then of fear or kind of a control thing of wanting to make sure that life can be held together so it doesn't fall apart, you know, but also just this sense sometimes of like not knowing when something could happen. Yeah. And yes.
You know,
that was one of the, there were 3, that was one of the big ones. So when you said that, I was like, I agree.
No, you know what you were just saying, it resonated with me, Naomi, because I was like, so often I wouldn't even know somebody and I would hear they died. And I like, right away, my anxiety just wants to flare up. And I'm just like, but Sione, you didn't even know this person. Yeah. But it's just, and then realizing that, acknowledging that, it's like, okay, every time somebody dies, your anxiety flares up. Why? And so I think
Yeah.
that's where the attachment of death came in. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need to like work through this because like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like you said, especially when a young person dies
Yeah.
and they just died.
Yeah.
They're, you know, they didn't have cancer or they didn't, you know, this.
And it raises so many questions.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I mean, we all gonna die at some point.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the
Which
way
is
that
weird, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah, yeah.
inevitable, but
Yeah.
then it's this thing that we're terrified of.
Yes.
And when it
Yeah,
happens, it
absolutely.
impacts us deeply.
absolutely, but also God created us.
Yeah.
The way He created us, what He has for us is for eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is something that actually get on us. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm aware that my parents are going to die at some point, but the idea that they won't be here at some point terrifies me.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's true.
I was going to say the very same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, like they're again about my parents. They're super young. They're on their middle 40s, but like, and they make so many plans about the future. And I'm like, that's great. I really want to see them
Yeah.
Yeah.
getting to that point, but I also want them to live life before that, you know, because you never know. I feel horrible saying that,
No,
but
yeah,
you
this is
really
true.
never know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get what that can be something that will trick us or make us think like
Yeah.
Yeah.
when death is so close to us.
Yeah.
Do you guys just ever lie in bed at night and just think in your head, what if this person died and how would I cope with this? And I often like when, for example, I try not to. I was
But, yeah.
struggling with this for a
Yeah.
while, and I remember it's like I would, for example, Jonas would go and like he'd go to pick someone up from the
Yeah.
airport.
I have that.
And I'd be lying in bed like, what if he never comes back?
No.
Yeah.
What if he gets in a
Yeah.
car crash and dies? And I
Yeah.
go through this is what would happen. And I
Yeah.
go through my whole
Yeah.
life of living without him. And at that point, I've worked myself up into this emotional state
Yeah.
where I'm like crying and I'm like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And actually I was talking to my mum about this. My mum's a counselor.
Yeah.
And she walks through with a lot of teens, a lot of people, and she does such a great job. And she said, "This is intrusive thoughts." And she said,
Yeah.
and she said something so simple, but it's changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's if you have an intrusive thought,
Yeah.
one of these thoughts that come into your mind that you did not invite in, you just say out loud, "That's an intrusive thought."
Yeah.
And she goes, at first it will do nothing, but you'll find it will stop coming, it will stop happening because
Yeah.
you're recognizing that's not coming from yourself.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
said, and so many of the teens that she is counseling that are going through thoughts coming into their head, like I want to kill myself, things
Yeah.
like that. It's just changing them. And it changed my life. I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
Ever since I started saying, that's not real.
Wow.
That's an
Wow.
intrusive thought.
That's amazing. I was just when you were talking about this, I was gonna say like I used to have those thoughts, but I just had at some point I had a realization that that was not good for me. So every time I would just initiate to think about that, I would just stop everything and say, "No, I'm not gonna go that way."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
tried.
it works.
Those are
And
true.
at first, I tried all the Christian things, you know. Like, I was like, I'm going to pray in tongues. I'm going to read my Bible verses out loud. I'm going
Yeah.
to just pray it away. But it wasn't helping.
Yeah.
And like, I just
Yeah.
it wasn't helping. And you try so hard to do all the things that you're told you should do.
I think that is
Yeah.
such a good point because it's such a big taboo at church in like a Christian world. I'm not saying every single church
Yeah.
is. I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
that it's for everybody, but it's still a big thing where it's almost as you are not allowed to have mental health issues if you have God. Like
It's
yes,
a struggle.
it's gonna happen.
real.
Like it's
It's
not
real.
because you're Christian, it's not because you go to church, it's not because you have a relationship with God that maybe at some point you're gonna go through something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It's like we're human beings, like that. It's something that happens. The same way you need to take care of your body, you need to take care of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
No,
need
it's
to
true.
take care of your spirit. So different things can take on that road,
Yeah.
you know. Something I told you guys before, we didn't go through much that, but I started into a depression in 2021. And I just didn't know what was going on. I was like fully working. I was like really, I don't know the right expression, but that wasn't affecting my work, but was affecting me
Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I would just wake up, get work done, and that was it. By
Yeah.
the end of the day, I got my work done. But my mind would not think. I didn't really do anything that would bring me life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized that part of it was because I haven't seen my family in like 3 years at that point because of COVID and everything. Like it wasn't that simple to just go to Brazil. I'm from Brazil, by the way. So my whole family lives in Brazil. It's just Eduardo and I and his sister who lives in England with her two kids. But like my side of the family, I have no one here. And that was really affecting me. So I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that something wasn't right. And that's funny now looking back. But a friend of mine, she was taking a photo of another friend of ours. At the cafe where I work. And I was in the background of that photo. And I was just like looking at my computer. And that was a film camera that they took the photo. So when they developed, it was months later. And then they showed me the photo. And on my face, you could see I was not okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's insane looking back and how it was like my eyes were so like dark under my eyes. I looked exhausted, but I had so much going on at that point. I just felt that I had no choice to stop.
Yeah.
Anyways, I ended up going to Brazil, visiting my family. They helped me with tickets because it literally was October when I realized how I was not okay. Like, had this one time I was just crying like nonstop. Poor Eduardo, my husband, didn't know what to do. He just got home one day. I was sitting on the floor with a worship song playing, and then he opened the door and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
He's like, "Is it the time of mother? What do I do?"
No, he was like, "Is there anything I can do?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. I just need to process." And I really, that's a lot. So I just felt like that something was wrong. I really needed that time to just like cry and understand. And then I was like journaling, and that's something that really helped me through anxiety. It's like writing down like what is on my mind. I really had to take out of my brain and put somewhere else. To have a better perspective. So like writing down, one of the topics that I felt that was really coming up on me strongly was missing my family. And I'm like, if there's something I can do right now, it's call them and say how much I miss them. So listen, I love my family. We're very close, but we are not that kind of people that like, oh, I love you on the phone. You know, I miss you. It's like the love language that we have, it's completely different. It's very far from like putting on words. So that was a shock for them, and they really saw that something was not okay. They were like, "It's okay, like we're gonna help you, like come visit." It's Eduardo coming. They even asked if Eduardo want to go as well. They said, "We're gonna find a way." And I was like, "No, that's okay. We have a lot going on right now, and I think it would be good for me to just be myself, you know, go in to see my family." And Eduardo understood. It was hard for the both of us. It was a month apart. But I took that time to really just detox, you know, from all the anxiety, everything that was going through. I just took time to rest. And I went to the doctor. So here's something I think for you that are listening, something that it's very important. It's like ask for help, but also maybe something, it's like chemical or hormonal. It's something that you can test and see what is going on. So I found out that actually my levels of vitamin C, vitamin D, and iron were extremely low. So my body wasn't functioning right. Like my physically, something that wasn't right physically on me was affecting me mentally. So it's another thing that we need to be aware. Like sometimes it's just like vitamins. I literally took some time to rest, took some vitamins, and that helped me so much.
I think one of the things you said that like is we few of us have said it is like the acknowledging like the problem. And I think one of the things I do to this day, Naomi would get this. If Naomi was sitting beside me, I would just hold her hands. And I'm not a huge touchy human, as she knows, as you all know, but I would like, because if I'm feeling anxious, I just need to like hold someone I feel safe with or whatever. And so often, I'm like, you've always been that person for me where I'll just grab Naomi's hand or like, and one of the things is like, when my anxiety flares up, I don't eat, so I lose weight. And I think a few times, you know, and you didn't know this, Naomi, but you like kind of helped me in a sense accountable. Like you're like, Sion, where's your butt go? And I'm like, and I got a big butt.
I keep her accountable on that
she's
one.
She's like, your butt is gone. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then later on, I go put on I have a specific trousers that shows if I
measure.
measure. So I put it on. I'm like, oh my gosh, Naomi's right. My butt is gone. And then and she's just like, seriously. And so then when I'm like, okay, I think I'm anxious. I think we need to figure this out. And so often I think because when I'm anxious, I just don't eat and I just and stuff like that. So it's just knowing those things and how to kind of deal with those.
Yeah. And I think even what you were saying, it makes me think of something where with my anxiety, there was an element because it had the overworking element as well. So like the achievement side, even that Leiji has, I think I struggle with a lot as well of just this thing of it needs to be perfect, you know? But I think that was something where like, I remember one time and almost this thing of like, I always need to be doing more than what is required of me because what is required of me isn't enough, Yeah. So I think like there was one time where like my boss was talking to me and came over and it was before I was getting married and they were just like, Naomi, like you get this many days off for your honeymoon or whatever, for getting married, there's time off that you get. And they were like, you get this many days off. And she was like super firm with me. She was like, and I was like, yeah, like, and she's like, Naomi, you are going to take all of those days off. And I was just like, good. I was like, well, good. I was like, yeah, no, I mean, we're going to plan this, but I don't know, maybe I don't need all of it. And she's like, no, she's like, literally, you will take all of those days off. Like, I will not let you come in for any of those days. And I remember like just sitting, talking to her and I just like got super I started crying because I think there was something that I realized in that moment, which also was like a rude awakening to myself where I was like, wow, I need someone else to help me be helped.
Yeah. Yes.
And like that for me was like very humbling because again, it's like with the desire to be effective, with the desire to like kind of know yourself and what you can handle. It's like I suddenly realized like I don't know myself well enough to know what my capacity is. And I actually need people to kind of like keep me accountable to look after myself. Yeah. So I think for me, there's even just this element of like, it's cool hearing from you because I didn't know that. Like, whereas like through our friendship, there was an opportunity then for me to kind of help you. Like help yourself, but also just that challenge then of like where within the people around us and our friendships, like do we see people flagging like with Leiji, like where do you notice those small things and how can we even like really be firm in helping one another like help themselves.
And it's how you do it because you've like, I think if you were to like flag me like, seriously in front of people, like where's your butt? And I'm like, girl, please not now. But you was always when we were together, like, hey, like, what's up? And sometimes I don't notice. Like, I'm really self-aware, but sometimes I think when you're so in it and you're just like, it's like your body, it shows. I do want to ask you guys all questions since we've all struggled with anxiety and stuff. Do you ever, when I have had, whether it be weeks or a day where I was like anxious, and then I go to bed at the end of the day and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, Beth talked to me today. I was not present because you're so consumed by it, And I think sometimes anxiety and depressions are like siblings, It's a selfish thing because you're constantly thinking about, what it be your depression or your anxiety, you're so consumed by it that it kind of feels blur when, people are talking to you. And so sometimes I go to bed and be like, I don't even think I was present. Like my body was there, but I wasn't present when people were saying. Do you guys have that?
Yeah, I think I do. I think it's probably... It's a tricky one because I think on one hand, there's the element of it does often make you look internally. Yeah. And sometimes that can be unhealthy and you get overly focused just on what's happening. And like even you were saying kind of intrusive thoughts, then like they become bigger and bigger and bigger. But I also think sometimes it is also like a directing towards having to realize, oh, there's actually something I think that is a bit amiss and that maybe I need to kind of like take the time to work through and to deal with. And to understand a bit more so that I can shift my habits or shift the way that I do things. But I mean, I come also from a very like classic family where my parents would totally be, and this is something that I don't always find super easy, but I still do think there's benefit in it where it's like the challenge of like when you're feeling this way, that thing of like, instead of it becoming overly focused on yourself, to continue to try and bring yourself back in the day to looking at the things around. One, like appreciating beauty, appreciating that things are ticking over, like appreciating your meal. Very true. But also gratitude. Even things just like looking at how can I like love the other person? Like how can I love the person in front of me and prefer them? And just the way that can kind of like automatically help either distract like or at least like even maybe sometimes bring kind of like fulfillment within your day-to-day life that then helps you kind of like put some weights on the scale.
Yeah.
I hate to cut us short, guys, but we could talk about this for such a long time.
It's very true.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad because I feel like I've got to know you all a little bit more and learn some of your struggles, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
But we'll end it here, and I'm really looking forward to our next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, ladies, for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.